are planning a museum trip to Paris and you'd like to see how I crammed in as many museums as possible into an 8-day trip, mostly walking, a little bit of metro, a lot of old history rather than new history, then this video will be for you. Let's check it out. I always call our arrival day, day 1, because we travel from the west coast of the US and we fly overnight, so we usually arrive in Paris around 8 in the morning, and it's usually 10:30 or 11 before we get to whatever we've rented in the city, and that will vary depending on where you're staying. On this particular trip, I stayed on the Ile Saint-Louis, so I arrived to the apartment I had rented there. I had an apartment that was on the island. It looked out over the river and the Marais. I dropped off my bags, I showered and changed, and I got right back out on the street, probably by noon. If you're coming from the US that first day, you are going to be tired, so I picked something easy, something that's more low-key, just wander a market street or wander some stuff, get out and see the scenes. So that day I met up with Shannon from This French Life, who is one of my favorite people on the planet, and she lives nearby. So we walked from the Ile Saint-Louis across the river and into the Marais, where we wandered some amazing medieval streets. We wandered the famous Rue des Rosiers, we wandered around the St. Paul and the Village St. Paul. We sort of ended that on the Place des Vosges and then made a circle back to the island, because by late afternoon that first day I was really pretty tired and just ready to go grab some groceries and make a dinner in and then plan the next day. My day 2 trip was an all-day visit to the Louvre, and I wanted to get a good night's sleep before heading out to do that. And a major tip for the Louvre, definitely do your homework before going and it will pay off. You can go and just wander, but this is my 3rd trip going through the Louvre, so I spent the whole evening on their online catalog making actual notes on a piece of paper of things that I wanted to see, what room they're in, what wing they're in, and I made myself sort of a walking route to go through the museum, checking off each thing as I found it. I booked myself a timed entry ticket to go in around 11 because it was my 2nd day there and I did not want to get up after that first night, spending a night there. I didn't want to get up with jet lag and have to get up and race out the door at 9 in the morning. Definitely plan a full day for this gigantic museum. There are places to eat in the museum, so you have somewhere to stop, take a break, grab a bite to eat, and hit the rest of the museum. On day 3, I met up with Shannon again, and we went to one of her favorite museums, which is the Jacques-Marc André. If you love history and the Belle Époque and art from all around Europe, this is a definite must-see. I was surprised that it turned out to be one of my favorite things I've seen in Paris. It's a gorgeous historic home. We went on from there, had a nice lunch at the restaurant that is on site at the museum, and then we parted ways, and I took a quick metro ride from there down to Les Invalides. I popped out and I walked all the way to the Rodin Museum, which was another one that has been on my wish list for a while, where I got to see all of the amazing Rodin sculptures. I did miss the garden there, mostly because it was raining quite a bit on and off, and so I was trying to skip rainstorms. And that evening, I went online again and did some homework for the following day, where I booked timed entry tickets to get into the menagerie at the Jardin des Plantes and the Grande Galerie de l'Evolution for day 4. I went into a little bit of one of the medicinal gardens there and then into the menagerie, which is the zoo that's there. I believe it's one of the oldest still working zoos in the world. It's a very neat place to go, terrific place to take kids. This whole park area is a great kid day trip in Paris. This is also a great break to do in Paris if you're a country mouse like me and you need to be somewhere to get away from the city noise and bustle, and you just want to maybe hear the sound of some birds and the smell of animals. Check out the menagerie in the Jardin des Plantes. After spending a morning in the gorgeous menagerie, I walked back across the gardens and to the Grande Galerie de l'Evolution, which is another super place for kids. I have a whole video about it. Really enjoyable place to just wander, get out of the rain. I did a little shopping and then went to a local market on the Ile Saint-Louis and grabbed some groceries for a little dinner in my apartment. Day 5 of this trip for me was a Sunday and it was pouring rain, and since it was the first Sunday of the month, most museums that day are free, and I have been before, but I went back again to the Cluny Museum. They had renovated it recently, and I wanted to see the overhaul, and it was amazing. This is one of the only places I've been more than once in Paris, and if you are into medieval history, this is a must-see. It's got all the medieval art and history, the tapestries, the Lady and the Unicorn, and then it also has the Frigidarium, which is the Roman ruins. down below, there's a whole Roman ruin thing you can check out. After I got out of the Cluny, I walked through the rain down the Boulevard Saint-Germain and got to enjoy some of the little food vendors along the way and just some Paris streets in the rain, all through the Latin Quarter, down some of the medieval streets like the Rue Galande is a super historic and beautiful little street, and made my way back to the Ile Saint-Louis. On day 6, I met up with Shannon again, and we took the metro and went up to Montmartre, where we spent the day exploring and sightseeing. We had a lovely lunch. We got into the Basilica and got to wander around and see that whole beautiful place, and the view is incredible, of course. Walked back down the backside of the hill and then metroed back into the city. That is a terrific day trip. I would spend a whole day doing that if you were wanting to go up there, but definitely I don't recommend it unless you are big into stairs and inclines. Many, many stairs and lots of fairly steep hill walking. On day 7, I got up and wandered down from the Ile Saint-Louis to the Conciergerie because I'm also a huge French Revolution and Marie Antoinette fan, so I got to wander the Conciergerie, which was her final prison stop. I got to see the oldest public clock in France, which is right there, and then I had a beautiful lunch, again ducking out of a rainstorm, in the Place Dauphine, which is a beautiful little park at the end of the island that it feels like no one knows it's there. Maybe it was because it was November and it was raining, but I felt like I was the only one in the whole park except for a couple of locals. And after that, I continued on down and went into the Orsay Gallery, where I had a timed entry ticket again, wandered through the Impressionist Gallery there. After the Orsay, I actually walked across the river on a pedestrian bridge and went over into the Tuileries Garden. I grabbed a lovely cup of coffee and wandered out. There's a really nice fountain there. You can see the Place de la Concorde and the obelisk, and you can actually see all the way up to the Arc de Triomphe. You can see the Eiffel Tower from right there. So that was a great place to wander, and then that was a lot of walking at that point. So I did grab a metro from the end of the Tuileries all the way back down to the St. Paul, and then back to the island. For that evening, I booked a 1-hour tour with a classic 2CV car that you can book several different places in Paris. Those little cute little funky cars will come and pick you up and drive you around at night, and you can have an hour-long jaunt around the city with the lights and the private guide who will point out points of interest and little bits of history, and you can relax and just see the sights. On day 8, I met up with Shannon again, and she took me on a wonderful wander through the Marais, the Rue Montorgueil, the covered passages, and all the way up to the Palais Royal, where we had a delicious chai tea and a bite to eat, sat by the fountain for a bit, and then we parted ways, and I went on to the Musée des Arts Décoratifs. And this museum was a really wonderful surprise. This is full of everyday furnishings and objects from everyday life from all the centuries between the medieval era up until now, everything from tapestries to shoes and toys. Spend a full day. That is a full day trip. There is a restaurant there, which I believe will be opening in May of 2023. It is at the higher end of the price range, but that's your only option for food if you're going to spend a day in that museum. That is the only option. So maybe make that a splurge day for a fancy lunch and a long museum day. This was my last evening in Paris, so I met up with Shannon and we had a really lovely dinner at a nice restaurant on the Ile Saint-Louis. And then we did take a quick stroll around the river at night. I hope you enjoyed this quick run through my museum itinerary. I'm showing you here the list so you can make notes if you'd like to plan a similar museum trip to Paris. If you enjoyed this content and you'd like to see more of our travels and travel tips, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.